Present.
Scott Boris.
I haven't heard from Commissioner Vorse, so I imagine he will be here.
Dave Richard.
Here.
Mariana Hill.
I have also not heard from Commissioner Hill, so I assume she'll be here as well.
Joe Grissom.
Here.
Before we get started, I hope I don't know if everybody's met Joe Grissom yet. He is our new addition. I think everybody saw it. We sent out, I think last week, that Tony has resigned from the board, and Joe's stepping right in. So
I'm glad we got somebody better looking.
yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were here. I apologize for that. I didn't know you were here.
And the average age went down.
And the average, like in half, right?
but that's why I welcome you aboard, Joe.
Thank you.
You know, I'll take you a while to get in the groove there, but if you have
Sure.
questions and stuff, just
Sorry about that, man. I didn't know you were here.
jump right in.
Okay.
I'll get you back, Rick. Can you do like 30-second spiel about who you are?
I don't think it takes that long, but Joe Grissom recently just moved to Aurora almost a year ago, but has been working in the community for over a decade and some change. So, father of two, soon to be grandfather of two.
Oh.
He laughs. He knows the story behind it. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. Otherwise, pretty boring.
What do you do for work?
I do a couple of things. I'm an entrepreneur, so I own a couple of different businesses, a couple of different ventures. Some people believe I don't go to work, but I actually do. So I work from home. That's just that. Involved a lot in the community. Looking forward to getting more involved in the community now. I'm actually invested in here, so that's it. Sure.
Where'd you grow up?
Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah. Born and raised.
Just to piggyback a little bit, Commissioner Grissom has been around the agency longer than I have. I mean, he's been involved in the community, Eastwood, Southland, working with the youth. Spent a lot of time working with Alderman Hart Burns and doing a lot of coordination for us. So he's not, though he's new to the board, he is not by any means new to the agency.
This is true.
Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting, March 23rd, 2016.
I motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion second. Any questions, discussions? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Public comments? Nothing? Review of financial reports?
So the month of March is the end of our fiscal year. So all of the all the work we've done, we wrap it up this month. It'll take about 2 months to kind of wrap up the full fiscal year and have unaudited financial statements ready for everyone. But just to kind of our internal numbers, we had a $26,000 net loss for the month of March. If you recall, both February and March, we mentioned we would have losses because we spent a lot of money getting all the maintenance work together for the REAC inspection. So this is kind of the last month of that. We shouldn't see that as a continuation. I expect April to be a positive month again to start the new fiscal year. Programmatically, we had a $51,000 loss in the public housing program, which again is related to the REAC work. And then we had a $77,000 net loss in the public housing program and a $51,000 net profit in the Section 8 program. So again, we're still seeing some profitability in the Section 8 program. We'll kind of keep an eye on that as we go into this new fiscal year. Just so that we're not loading one program and then one program have profits while the other one's suffering, to the extent obviously that we can allocate funds in other places. To close out the year-to-date numbers, we had a $47,000 net profit. Considering all the money we spent doing the REAC work, I think we did pretty good, all things considered. I mean, coming out ahead of the game a little bit. It's a small number. I mean, we're an $18 million agency, so $47,000 is essentially a break-even year, but considering how aggressive we were with spending in the last 2 or 3 months for REAC, I'm very pleased that we ended the year on a positive note either way. The public housing program still did have a loss, $271,000, but again, the kind of star of the agency this year has been the Section 8 program, profit of $319,000. So it all balances out in the end. We don't run our program or want to run the agency by one program or the other. We don't really separate the two out and say one is doing great and the other is not. It's it's a team effort and it's a balanced act as far as the financials are concerned. So the fact that the agency balanced the year out is very good for us. There are any questions on the financials?
It's not the financials, but I found this last meeting, but that, the React scores, so we're pleased with those?
Yes, I mean, obviously we want better scores. Oh, sorry. Overall, obviously, we want better scores agency-wide anyway, but we did do very well. At our family sites, which have traditionally kind of been a harder area to do, we scored an 80. That means that's a score that's high enough they actually won't come out and re-inspect those for 2 years. We saw a 57% increase in the score we had at our high-rise sites. I mean, we got a 60 over there. So again, we saw the improvements based on the spending that we had. So again, there's still work to be done, and by no means do we think that we're done. But I think the amount of improvement that we had overall was very significant, given the amount of work that maintenance and public housing put in.
Or was there like major things on the apartment side that were?
The apartment side was not one major item. It was, for example, door hardware was a big issue. Doors closing on their own was a big issue. We had just recently changed all of the, I forget what they're called, basically the closers on the doors, the hinges. And so they're a little tighter. So the doors, when you let go of the door, it would come to but not close all the way. Another item that we lost a lot of points on were for the inside the units, the closet doors. We have the sliding, like accordion style doors. The way they latch is a little ball that's screwed into the wall. It's not technically, according to the inspectors, it's not hardware. So they would cite us for the hardware being missing, even though we use the ball and kind of you push the door around the ball to latch it. Small things that we'll address, so we've already started addressing those now, and we'll go through and continue the preventive maintenance to get those taken care of before next cycle. And Ray is pulling out large sums of cash. You helping to pay for the React stuff for next year? Are there any other questions on the financials?
Lots of questions.
I hope so.
How are you?
All right, how are you, sir?
Good, sorry I'm late.
Do you have any questions?
Let me just check. Let's look at a few things. The question that I had was on, so you went through the financials, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. The maintenance contract line item, the budget to like what's actually happening, there's a big difference?
Yes.
So did you talk to that already, or did you?
Not specifically, but it goes back to the React. This is, we had a loss this month, just like we did last month. That's just capturing all of the work. We paid out a lot of the contractors in March for the work that they did on React. So that line was over mainly because of that single activity.
Okay.
You have anything else, sir?
I don't think so.
Anything on the list of bills?
Let's move on to departmental reports.
As I mentioned earlier, now is our year-end close time frame. So this week, Monday and Tuesday, our accountants were on site going through compiling all the information. They usually don't spend a lot of time on site because it's rather expensive to have them come all the way out here from Pittsburgh. So they're here for 2 days on site. They gather all the information. We do a lot of stuff electronically with them now. So they'll be working for the next probably week or two, wrapping up the books. We have to get in the unaudited submission by the end of May. And then from there, we transfer that over to our auditors who will start in about September doing the audit. And they have that done about November, December. So with the year end, this closes our, and I know it's kind of a weird way to do the time frame, but it closes our fiscal year 2016. We are now starting fiscal year 2017. So that's, that piece you'll probably see from time to time. You might get some requests either from the accountants or from the auditors for different things. It's simply because it's part of the year-end process. They need to do a lot of compliance on some of the items that we have in the books. Our paperless transition, we're on the second phase of that now. We had a very successful first phase in our finance department. Now we're rolling it out to our public housing and Section 8 department. So what essentially that is, all of our document storage is going electronic. So we're not going to have if you go in our Section 8 department, for example, there's a wall full of bookcases. We're not going to have that wall any longer. We're going to start to transition all of our documentation to electronic storage. I mean, it's safer and it's cheaper too. I mean, we can, if there's a file and I need to send it to somebody, no matter where they are, we can send it. We don't have to have a physical file. So it's just better for the agency. third phase we're hoping to get rolled out in the fall, and that'll be all of the sites, the rest of the agency. We're hoping by the end of the year, everything goes well, we'll be fully paperless at that point in time. Kind of piggyback, I did have on my list to welcome Commissioner Grissom, but he jumped on that, so. And we've been having discussions about development projects. I know we've talked about some projects downtown, we've talked about some projects, we've done a couple projects, we've become a very active development agency. We're really pushing the envelope with a lot of the work that we're doing, and we're starting to get recognition, for that work. We've talked about with some of our other, with our own housing stock. When do we start to redevelop our own stock? When do we look at the Maple Terraces, the Centennial House properties, or Indian Trails? And when do we start to really redevelop our own stock? So we've been taking a look at that now a lot more. Indian Trail, we had talked about, even when our interns were here, we had them do a small presentation about how we could redevelop that property. So we started to take that. We found out the Indian Trail in and of itself is a little small. 36 units doesn't make for a great development project, and it's too small, but the site is a very good site. It's a high traffic area. It's a great place to do a really high quality development that's kind of a showpiece for us. One of the developers that we've had a kind of working relationship, we haven't done any work with before, mentioned the opportunity to merge two development projects into one. So you take one of the larger sites and the Indian Trail site, for example, the Maple Terrace and an Indian Trail, make them one development project but two separate sites. Mix in the retail, mix in the residential, mix in even potentially office, parking garages. But it's just something that we're looking at a little bit more seriously now, and trying to figure out what's going to be the best steps for us as an agency and for our residents as we start to move those kind of ideas forward. So I want to kind of lay it out there now, so you'll start to, you'll hear a little bit more about that, not in the coming months necessarily, but over the rest of this year, we'll probably be having more information, more discussions about that kind of approach to improving our stock of housing. There you go. Yeah. You know what, I think my last one, you want the back of one?
Yeah, that's, back one's fun too. Thank you, Chief.
Are there any questions from that?
We officially got notified that we're getting the Ross grant.
I apologize, yes, we did. We did receive official notification just last week that we're getting the Ross grant, so we will have to identify how we're going to utilize those funds the best way to get the most use out of the dollars, particularly how to get more services out of that grant. The first 3 years, and we did a good job with the first 3 years, and there's I think it set a stage for us though that we really need to push a little bit harder and get more bang for the dollars. We are still reviewing the requirements, so we still have to kind of get our minds around exactly what the grant is going to require of us. But ultimately, we do need to start getting that out. I expect by the middle of May we'll have a plan ready and we'll have everything kind of rolled out.
So we talked a little bit about that last week and what we were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a game plan yet on how we want to do that with other agencies and so forth?
Sure. One of the requirements of the grant, though, it is the grant is highly focused on service coordination. So it still requires that we have some level of focused attention on the grant. Now, I don't know that the same approach we took last year is the right approach, but I think we still need some of those dollars to use to incentivize some of these organizations that are going to come on site and come do work with us. I really think that it's a good idea to use some of the dollars to help these organizations that are providing these services to continue to be able to provide those services for free. But at the same time, we do have to have some level of coordination to make sure that we are both following what the grant requires of us, but also making sure that we're tracking and keeping kind of tabs on everything that's going on with the grant and reaching out and kind of organizing all of the work that's going to be going on.
So what I'm concerned about is having something in writing that we can turn to as an organization and saying, this is our plan for this money.
Sure. And we'll have that by next board meeting.
Okay, good. Thank you.
That's something that we'll kind of approve as a board. Is there going to be any discussion?
It can be something that we approve as a board. We hadn't really. I think the first year we didn't do that. If that's something the board wants, that's certainly something we can do. It's not a problem at all. We can just make it an action item for the next board meeting, and we'll make sure you get the information a couple weeks early if you have any questions or anything.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that since there have been some questions about this, that we go into it with a plan that
Sure.
you'll develop and it gets our blessing somehow, some way.
I don't think we necessarily have to turn it into an action item right like that. I think if he gets the information out to us beforehand, where everybody has a chance to turn around and look at it, see what's going on, we come back at the next meeting, we sort of sit here and discuss it. You know, if the board wishes, we can turn around and do it the other way. But I mean, I think we need to have a clear knowledge of exactly, you know, how we're gonna administer this grant versus how we did the last time, so.
Yeah, and I'm okay with either one of those.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure that,
Right.
that all questions are answered by whoever asks those questions on why we're doing it, this is how we're doing it, and so forth.
I think that's the way to do it, the way Chief suggested, get all your input, like you guys are saying, and it's not a policy or anything like that, so we don't have to take action, we just have to listen and give input, and I think that's,
I'm good with
I
that.
think you guys are both saying that.
Yeah, I think, it's just the board's role to kind of set the direction, that will make sure that we're all in agreement.
I'll make sure you guys get that a couple weeks in early. Is there anything else?
When you were talking about the development before,
Mhm.
you are talking about the Aurora Housing Authority, not the Northern Lights?
Well, we would need, well, we don't necessarily need a developer. You're gonna need someone to organize the lending and all those different pieces. We own the property, so it's different than the other developments that we've done in the past, because these are our pieces of property, we own them. So developer fees, all those things, they come back here in that situation because they're our properties. Rents come back here, profits off the property come back here, instead of going to a developer. When we did St. Charles project, when we did the Brentshaw project, we don't own
Right.
the land, we don't own the property. So that's why the dollars go to the developers in those situations. They're also the owners. We're gonna be the owner of that project, or of a potential Maple Terrace project.
So Northern Lights doesn't have to be?
It doesn't have to be. I will say though, I mean, there is development activity that has to occur. Now, whether we choose to do it internally, we can bring in consultants and just do it, or we can use Northern Lights to do it. That's a discussion. And I think that's a structure issue that we would need to deal with in the development part of it. For example, to come up with the money to do that kind of development, we're gonna need to do a tax credit application. Generally, tax credits, I'm not gonna say are political, but there are some organizations that are better at getting them. They have more know-how in how to get those tax credits than we might have internally. So it might be better if we decide to say December, we wanna put in an application in the December round, we really wanna have a developer or somebody on board that knows how to write that application, that knows how to go down to IDA, knows who the players are and can make that happen. So we wanna put our best foot forward, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to have an all-out, we were giving everything to the developer like we would have in some of these other developments.
The reason I'm asking the question, Keith, is number one, so I have clear transparency on what happens. But the other thing is correct me if I'm wrong, is we had money at the Aurora Housing Authority that got pulled away and it went back to Washington.
Mhm.
If there is a way that we can use some of that money and it goes to fees for Northern Lights for us to do other projects, that's something that is suitable and appropriate also, correct?
So let me, to touch on that, so what'll happen if we say we did this project, say we didn't use a developer, we wrote our own tax credit application, we got it funded, we tore down the building, we built it, we got it all done, and we made $5-10 million doing that, let's say. What's gonna happen is HUD's gonna see that as program income for us. And then when they do the next year's allocation of operating subsidy, they're gonna say, well, you guys don't need the $3 million we give you because you've got $10 million. That's why when we talk about using that development company to keep the money from being retaken, that's why we do it. I understand that, you may want to maintain the entire program here, and that's fine. And just understand that the risk is, and those numbers are hypothetical. I'm not saying we're gonna make $10 million or lose 3, but whatever we do make, if it's all income that began here and stayed here, you do run the risk potentially of HUD identifying that as money that they can recapture. Whereas when we use a development company, that money is now outside of the agency and can then be used for other purposes.
So I'm thinking the right way. It makes sense to
Yes.
get it involved. Thank you.
As you get into that, have you had any initial thoughts in terms of, and maybe this is, you could say, hey, I'll answer this down the road, but in terms of if those would be rebuilt in the same kind of fashion or potentially mixed, kind of a mixed use or something else? I mean, it's a lot of the ideas that you brought forward and are kind of forward looking, and so just wondering as you, I guess, let me say it this way, as you report out to us and share ideas in the future, that'd be interesting to me, just your ideas on how those properties could be rebuilt, you know, for the future.
Sure.
You know, as opposed to how we've always done things in the past.
And just so we're clear, I mean, we want to continue to be, you know, we're starting, you know, and I think our reputation, especially in the state of Illinois, but also, you know, in the country, our reputation is starting to be cemented as an agency that is always doing the next thing. And that's something we want to continue to be. You know, I jokingly said to Commissioner Grissom when he joined, welcome to the show, because that's what it's become. We're really the agency that a lot of people are starting to model their activities after. You know, I went out to Joliet not too long ago and explained to them what we did here with Brenshaw, what we did with the adaptive reuse, what we did with our office. People are starting to recognize the kind of work that we do. We always want to, in my opinion, continue to be an agency that doesn't settle for the way things used to be. We own the property, so I think it's beneficial to us to redevelop something on the site. I don't necessarily agree with the idea that it needs to be the same thing. I think it should definitely be mixed use. I think it should definitely be a retail or transit oriented. I think we should be partnering with PACE, with the school districts, to bring in all of the different various resources and all of the different kind of mindsets into how to develop the future of a public housing development or of an affordable housing development.
So it's not just a remodel.
Exactly. You know, and I don't, you know, one of the things, you know, we were talking with our architect earlier this morning, kind of about the same idea, and you know, one of the things that she brought up was, you know, we can do underground parking garages. So all of a sudden you don't have, because one of the big issues at a lot of our sites is just not enough parking. Well, if you do 4 or 5 stories underground, now you've got a parking garage that you can use. And now you're doing, you know, some kind of non-housing activity on the first floor. Maybe you're bringing in a family focus, an AID, and making them part of the development. So their offices are there, so their resources are there. But also, you know, we're looking at, you know, the kind of housing that we develop. You know, Maple Terrace is all studios and 1 bedrooms, and I've never been a fan of studio housing. It's just, I don't think it's the best way to do affordable housing. So maybe we do some lower density. We do, you know, 1+ lofts or 2 bedrooms there. You lower the number of actual units, but you get bigger units, nicer units. There's a whole number of ways that we would want to approach that so that we're getting ahead of the game.
So when we're talking about this Maple Terrace, and this kind of hypothetical, right, are we talking tear down and rebuild that?
You know, I really don't know yet. I would think so, though. The building's 50 years old. You know, it probably is about time. And the other problem is, say we want to do a LEED green, but you can't do that. There's not a way to really make Maple Terrace in its current state a green building. It's just not going to happen. You know, you can't run the systems in there. You just really can't do it. So I would imagine, you know, from 2 standpoints. One, it's actually a little easier to just do a tear down and start all over, because now you're not trying to deal with how do I route all this stuff through a 50-year-old building. But 2, financially speaking, you know, I think even though it may on the face of it be a little more expensive, long term, your maintenance, your upkeep's a lot easier, because now you're dealing with newer technologies, newer buildings. Anything else?
And I totally agree. I mean, you can't, in my mind, you can't go into Maple Terrace and, let's put it this way, can you go into Maple Terrace and rehab that building? Yes, you can. But the amount of money that you would spend in going in there and trying to rehab that structure that was built in 1960 something, it's gonna be huge. So you're better off, if you're gonna do something, is to tear that building down and rebuild. And I agree, I mean, you're gonna lose, I don't know how many apartments are in that?
180.
Yeah, you're gonna lose some things there, I mean, some space. Apartments, and we just have to be creative in how we turn around and find other.
Doesn't that also go along with our goals of having, instead of a bigger building with a lot of residents in it, like more scattered housing?
Right. And to be quite frank with you, you know, coming from where I came from, Maple Terrace has been a headache for many years. It still is to this day. You know, so it's because of the way it's built and how, you know, undesirables are able to, you know, get into that building. Sometimes that actually puts the residents at risk.
Yeah.
So.
And keep in mind, you know, when we talk about this kind of lower number of units. The families that are there, nobody's going to lose housing as a result of this. So just kind of the same situation happened with Jericho Circle. Everybody who's there will get a voucher to maintain housing. So we're not going to be putting people on the street as much as we're going to be giving them different opportunities. And I think, again, when we talk about the voucher, that's going to a private landlord that's paying taxes. So again, it still benefits the broader community when we start doing that kind of approach to housing too. So and again, we're really early in this process, and it's very conceptual right now. But it's just something I thought I'd bring up because I know as time goes on, I'm going to want to start to bring some more ideas to the board about it. Anything else? Right.
All right, at the top of your page, you have your waiting list numbers for the public housing. We have 645 applicants at this moment. HCV, we have 156, and project-based voucher, we have 508. We did have a fire on March 26th over at Maple Terrace. It was contained to one unit. Restoration, the adjuster came out probably within the next business day or so. It happened on a weekend. He was there like either that Monday or Tuesday, and then the restoration company was there the day after. So that's on its way to make ready again. And then at the bottom of your page there, you have some of the ongoing or other events that have been going on at some of the sites. You have everything from Easter dinners going on at the various sites. We had the food truck over at Centennial House. We have been working over at Eastwood with Riverwoods or Fox Valley Christian Action to do their summer programming there. And Maple Terrace has a new Bible study group that's going to be starting soon, if it hasn't started already.
Any questions from us?
Yes, fire. How did it start?
Cooking.
It
was, yes.
Does it seem like we've had more fires since you came on board?
Trying to get the insurance money. Insurance money.
Mhm.
Commissioner.
I was just gonna say, what's the requirement for us to keep the separate waiting list for HCV and for project base? Just to re-explain that.
So in HUD's eyes, project-based and HCV are they're the same general program, but they're still separate sub-programs, I guess. So it's easier for us, and we could keep one waiting list, but it's easier for us to try and segregate the two because we might only want the project-based waiting list open versus, and that's the situation right now. The regular waiting list isn't open because those vouchers just don't turn over right now. We're trying to fill the Brenshaw units and the St. Charles units, so we have the project-based waiting list open specifically to help fill those two properties.
So would a family be on both lists or only one?
They could potentially be on both lists, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and there have been times where if we found that we don't have a qualified family currently on the project-based voucher waiting list, then we turn to the HCV list and say, okay, where's the next family that would be eligible for that list, and we refer them as well.
Okay.
Okay, for the Housing Choice Voucher Program, in the month of March, the caseworkers were working on 98 recerts that would be effective May and June. They completed 55 annual reexaminations, 48 interim and adjustments. They had 10 briefings for families that were porting in and families here that were moving. 2 families were sent to other housing authorities. They completed 14 leases. 9 initial move-in inspections, 55 annual inspections. We had 4 terminations. 2 were for violations. 1 was a voluntary and 1 was a family that ported out. 1 unit was abated. We had 2 repayment agreements that were signed. And right now we have a total of 16 project-based vouchers leased and 23 VASH vouchers to veterans and 839 HCV vouchers leased. Any questions? Oh, and I guess when you get to the CMAP thing, I brought my book if anyone wants to look at that. It's not quite done, but feel free. Any questions? Take a number for my book.
field, such as doing some painting and signage and stuff like that. As far as our vacancies is at 98%, and that has a lot to do with the maintenance and Maria's crew, and also Carlos coordinating with the contractors and stuff like that. We have with the inspections, even after REACT, we're still we got that REACT mindset. So we're continuing to do our inspections, and the guys are actually going in and generating work orders as they do to find other things. So they're kind of doing the inspections as they're doing work orders also. A lot has to do with our improvements. Is I think that the relationship we're starting to have with our residents and stuff, because we kind of live and die by them, because we can fix things, but if they don't cooperate and let us know when things are you know, then it's kind of a hit and miss thing, and we only see those things. And with the inspections, you know, we're doing pretty much quarterly and stuff like that. And like I said, the guys are generating work orders, and now we have the opportunity, because we're starting to do preventive maintenance, so we're actually replacing a lot of things that a lot of times we wait until it actually, you know, would start tearing down. So anything that's been kind of worn, like our shut-off valves, the old shut-off valves, we're replacing with quarter turns. You know, as far as storm doors, we're reinforcing the chains and putting bolts in so that it swing open. So a lot of this stuff that we spend a lot of money with the contractors gives us the opportunity to actually address things on time, and actually gives us a little more luxury to work with the residents. That's pretty much it.
You said the storm doors, is it mandatory by HUD that each unit has those on both, on both doors? No?
It's not, and I will say this, part of our improvement in REACT, and to be completely honest, is knowing the rules. So in certain, I mean, it was, that particular time of year, it's windy, any storm door that was broken during REACT or right before it, we just took it off. We took the hardware off, that way it doesn't get scored. And don't get me wrong, we're not saying that we're not putting them back, we will.
That's my question.
Yeah, we'll get them back. It's just that during that time frame, it helps us to know what they can and cannot score for. So it was easier for us at that time and more efficient to just take the door off and the hinges off. All that will eventually get replaced. Hopefully, it'll get replaced with new, better quality doors. So.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Because one tenant was joking, saying, I told you to come take your doors off. I was like, no, okay. The other question is, the center, since REACT is done, I'm just asking about the furniture and
yes.
whatever else.
We know the center, and if you all recall, we did start the process of kind of upgrading all of our community centers. The Eastwood Community Center was first. The Eastwood Community Center is essentially done. We didn't get an opportunity to order furniture. Number one, REACT came and all the money was diverted to that. And then secondly, we are waiting for our capital fund dollars to be allocated. This way we're not kind of out of pocket for the money. We get reimbursed for it when we do it that way. So we got the first allocation, but it doesn't cover the furniture part yet. So we're expecting to have that in May. So that's about the time we expect to be getting all the new furniture and everything in there. But it is coming.
And so one of the other commissioners mentioned a grand reopening possibly again.
Mm-hmm.
So you see that still happening?
Yes, it's warm. You can do it in the wintertime. It's warm now. So yeah, we can do it now.
Okay.
Well, it's not warm today, but it'll be warm one day.
Hey, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No.
Another thing
Mm-hmm.
is, Mr. Dave was painting the curbs, and I mentioned to him that normally in the summertime, churches and other organizations, nonprofit organizations, even some stores, they come over, they have a group, their community outreach department wants to do something. And they're like, what to do? I don't know, who do they normally contact when they're interested in doing those things? But I told them, like, if you do those sidewalks, the curbs, you're taking that work from somebody else this summer. And he was like, I'm just doing what I was told to do. But I was just wondering, and I didn't get a chance to ask to be sure when the last time it was done. But I know usually every summer a church come, they'll bring like 50 people, and they come over there and they just.
Yeah. Usually, and recently, Alderman Hart Burns has always contacted me with those things. But for any group, not just Eastwood, they can either just reach me, reach Maria, even just the property manager at the site, and explain that, hey, this is something we like to do. This is something, you know, some organization would like to do, and then we can kind of coordinate. I know we've provided some of the paint. I think in previous years we provided the brushes or something so that we can kind of help with buy the food or something. So it's not a problem. They can either reach me, Maria, or the property manager, and just give their interest in helping us out. We always take help.
Hey Jimmy,
Yes.
how many people are on your crew that does everything that you do?
Well, including my inventory and two cleanup
Everybody.
people, I have 9.
You have 9 total, for how many units?
506.
Is that enough people for you guys to do all the work that's required?
Since we've used the contractors, actually, it is, the workload has gotten down almost, you know, we can actually fulfill the time, cause on a regular work order, we got 5 days to do the repairs, and an emergency, actually, within 24 hours and stuff, right? So right now, the way things are set right now, everything's actually, like I said, we are staying on top of things, so.
Yeah,
I
it
guess-
just seems like a lot for 9 people to handle.
Well, and a lot has to do with, Mr. Gregory allow us to use contractors, because before we were just kind of patching things, and that's why things got the way they are. We didn't have the time, and with the contractors coming in, they actually rebuild a lot of things, so we have the opportunity now to, you know, maintain them more, and that's basically, before we were rebuilding and patching, now we can just maintain. So, as far as right now, things are, the guys, the work orders and everything it's very manageable.
Okay, I just wanna make sure that we're handling stuff, and, you know, you need to talk to Keith, of course, if, you know, you need another person, that's kind of,
And it's a twofold. And Jimmy's, and I appreciate. I mean, our maintenance team, they work very hard, and they always have. You know, we've just it's a balancing act. You know, it's balancing the number of people versus the number of contractors, and it always kind of unfortunately boils back to money and how can we get the most out of every dollar we're spending, and trying to figure out whether it's a contracted job or whether it's a maintenance job, and in between Carlos and Jimmy and both of their crews and the contractors, and we've really gotten to a point now where I think we've got that science down a little bit. But, you know, anytime it really depends. The season, you know, we get a bad winter, that changes. We get a really hot summer, that changes, you know. So it's like I said, we've got a great group of people now working with us to kind of get things done. So I think that's reflected in the improved REACT scores and just the overall appearance of the sites too.
How would you determine when it might be time to hire someone new as opposed to keep contracting work out? What kind of process makes that determination?
Well, for me, it's always a question of, okay, if I'm paying for, you know, at Maple Terrace, for example, let's say I'm paying every day, I'm paying for somebody to come out and patch a wall. Well, all of a sudden it says, okay, well, once I start doing the math, on an hourly basis, I'm paying contractors X dollars. I'm paying my maintenance people X dollars. Which one's effectively cheaper to get that same level of work done? But if I'm calling contractors, you know, 5 days a week to do one kind of general, then I need another person. But it's really trying to figure out, you know, is that going to be an ongoing thing, or is this just a temporary situation? So that's where I rely on Jimmy and Carlos, because that's their area of expertise. You know, I'm a finance guy. I can run the numbers all day long, but they know, is this an actual issue that we're going to see every day for the rest of the year, or is this an issue that's just something that's popping up because it's really hot and, you know, we're having HVAC issues. So I lean on them to tell me, you know, hey, we really are getting to a point where we need another person.
Just to reiterate, every guy there can pretty much do everything. Actually, we got guys that are better at certain areas and stuff like that. So, and with the contractors and stuff like that, we have accessibility. We use certain ones that are familiar with the buildings, and they'll come out, you know, usually immediately if we call them and stuff like that. But for the most part, you know, we're able to maintain and keep up stuff. Like I said, if it's something that we don't have the proper tool, it's going to be, you know, more cost effective to have them do it so the guys can stay and maintain. And I have that. I feel like I have that luxury that Mr. Gregory has allowed me to have. So right now the balance is really good right now. It hasn't been like that in years. So I mean, one thing with Jericho being gone, that took a lot of burden off us doing stuff like that. So we're actually, like I said, we're at the point where we're actually starting to do preventive maintenance. Something I've always wanted to do, but it's like we just got caught up and stuff, and things came up, and like I said, you can't compensate for emergencies and acts of God, you know.
and you guys are still responsible for the scattered sites also, correct?
None, well, no, those, because remember, we outsourced that to a Northern Light Development Corporation, so now they do all of the maintenance work for those as well.
Because if we grow that, then you gotta have more traveling.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's
more
actually-
logistical stuff, so.
And I think that's helped some too, because now our guys can go to a site and really focus on that site. You know, the individual homes the development company deals with within their fees, so it kind of works out.
Thank
How,
you.
how long have you guys used contractors?
We've always used them, you know. we've
But
always
more-
used them. Yeah, like I said, like for the boilers and stuff, we always call contractors, you know, because they're more familiar with stuff like that. But for the most part, if it's something that I feel that's either, you know, kind of dangerous for them, or that we don't have the proper equipment, or it's not, it's better for me to call contractors as opposed to have them spend, you know, 6-7 hours on there where I can call contractor. This way we can maintain and keep up with the rest of the stuff. That's what I usually do.
I think that's great.
I just would like to add that, whenever that you guys turn to, each maintenance guy, you know, assigning of locations and sites, I think that helped too. So, that's well, because the maintenance, getting to know the residents, and then the residents know the maintenance, so you know, you're kind of more familiar with this guy that's coming into your house, or that's walking around in your neighborhood, and you know who that is. And then, one neighbor was doing spring cleaning in her shed. She just had a question. She said the light bulb wouldn't turn on. Well, he was around, and so he was able to quickly address the situation and to answer her questions. So I think that's good too.
Yeah, there again, we're able, right now we're at a point where before we like, it's not that we didn't want to do it, just last time we had other things going on, so they'd have to do a work order. And we still do work orders, the guys actually generate, they have blank work orders, and they'll fill them out and do everything, and then I'll actually put it in the computer and stuff like that, so. Yeah, like I said, you know, a lot has to do with the residents, the report that we've been getting, and even the work has been nothing like it used to be in the past. I mean, we're actually doing actual repairs as opposed to reconstruction, the whole whatever be, you know, whether it be drywall, it's a small hole, it's actually getting sheets of drywall and, you know, getting the paper out there and stuff like that, to do stuff like that. So the repairs are basically now repairs are still rebuilding.
Anything else for Jim?
Old business.
I don't think we had anything.
New business resolution 1604, approval of Section 8 National Assessment Program.
As Sue mentioned, once a year, we do what's called the Section 8 Management Assessment Program, which we submit to HUD a document, that very tiny book over there. We submit that to HUD as certification for all of our Section 8 activities. It's how our program gets scored. Just to kind of remind the board, we have two separate scoring systems. The REACT scoring system is for our public housing, and then CMAP is for our Section 8. Our Section 8 program, for 3 of the 4 years that I've been here, has been a high performer. We've actually scored 100% of the points 3 out of the 4 years I've been here. The 1 year we didn't score was because of the timing when we added the Franciscan Ministries units. We added 500 units, and they didn't lease up right away, and that wasn't even in our control. So we got 86% instead of 100%. So I mean, our Section 8 program is truly you know, phenomenally run, and that's, you know, all credit to Sue for running that program very well, and her staff. It's a phenomenally well-run program. It's financially well-run, and it's you know, operationally well-run as well. But this is just kind of that part of that process where at the end of the year we submit that document to HUD, and it does require board approval before we can actually submit it. Are there any questions, or would anybody like to go through that? Lovely book?
It was Scott's here too.
Because, yeah, there you go. Are there any questions?
You're right, we put that in, the guy that shows up late.
Entertain a motion.
Second.
It's been motion and seconded that we approve resolution 16-04. Any questions or discussions?
Is there anything in there that we should
Or, I mean,
No,
Scott will send you an
no. What I would say,
you know, it's obviously not gonna need that.
absolutely no. The certification basically just covers, you know, that we have done all the work that we are required to do. So we've done the rent calculations. We've done, you know, it shows our lease up calculation, which is we mention to the board every month, and we show you what our lease up is. So the information that you guys get every month is just summarized essentially in a lot more detail inside that document. I think the only thing that might not be in there literally is the newest, like the most recent, because you're not going to get like April's information, and we have to actually include. I think we included extra months worth of information, right? We have to do like a year-end wrap-up of all those numbers. So.
It's, through April first,
Right, so-
through March 31st.
So there's some, you know, some tiny information. You probably know some changes in the middle of the month that you might not be captured, but essentially all of the information in that book is already something that you guys will receive. Our auditors also then, as part of their procedures, audit that book as well. So this is something that doesn't just get submitted by us; it gets reported on and then reviewed a few times as well.
So there's no, that's just a look back at the year prior.
Yes.
There's not any plans in there, what we're doing.
No. That's if we were going to make any changes like that, our administrative plan would have to address that, and we haven't changed that in a while. So. Are there any other questions?
We got a motion in a second. Oh, did we get a second?
Yeah.
We did that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Do you have to do a roll call on this or no?
I think it's at the chairman's discretion, as long as there's not any,
I put it in, thank you. I don't have one to give you.
I don't
Ready
think we
next
need
time.
to go into executive session this month.
So I motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.